99 Nights is very similar to the Dynasty Warriors series and is essentially a hack and slasher that throws you into a war between humans and goblins who've been fighting over mysterious orbs that when brought together will unleash a powerful calamity that both sides seek to control for themselves. To be fair, the story is pretty bare bones and is nothing to write home about, but when you jump into the gameplay, this is where 99 Nights excels. Naturally, you get to choose from one of many characters who each have their own movesets and special moves that can help make short work of the several hundred enemies you'll see on screen at any one time. Of course, you've got many ways to deal with the nigh on endless amount of threats, with the main one being something known as an orb attack, which is beholden to a gauge that you slowly fill over time with each successful kill. Once it's full, you can hit a button to unleash it, which gives you a small period of time where you're completely invincible and have access to two specific moves that completely wipe the area of enemies should they walk into your path. Apart from this, you have plenty of combos and options to choose from. Quite a variety in fact, with new combos and moves added with each level up, and this is where the light RPG mechanics come into play that allow you to increase your stats over time as well as give you access to new weapons. As throughout the game you're constantly drip-fed new ways to deal with the ever-growing threat of your foes in new and exciting ways that serve to spice up the gameplay. If you're a fan of Musos or are simply looking to get into a game that's easy to pick up and play and lose a few hours to, then 99 Nights is a solid option. For anyone familiar with the Tokyo Extreme Racer series, Import Tuner Challenge is essentially the last entry in the franchise before the developers went bust. Much like the games that came before it, rivalry-based bouts against local drivers and racing teams is still at the core of the game, which are played out on stretches of the urban Tokyo track. Instead of racing in loops or even point to point, nearly all of the driving you'll do in Import Tuner is challenge-based, as you'll roam the Japanese highway, eyeing competitors from your car and flashing your high beams in their rear view mirror if you'd like to issue a challenge. The main aim is to rise through the ranks of the underground racing scene, and with up to 200 different teams to take on, there's a serious amount of races to make your way through, and as you do you'll be earning currency which can be used to customize and unlock an insane amount of cars, and this is where Import Tuner steals the show. There's a lot of tinkering to be done, both under the hood and in dressing up your ride with your own personal flair, adjusting gear ratios, changing the camber angle of your wheels, and even tweaking the angle of your spoiler. The level of detail in which you're allowed to customize these many different aspects is simply staggering and goes a long way in providing a serious amount of gameplay. Expect to spend a good amount of time swapping out seats, mirrors or tail lights, fine-tuning your paint job, or even installing neon lights under your car's body like some boy racer. If you're like me and love the intricacies of building your own vehicle and seeing how each change affects its performance, then Import Tuner Challenge will be right up your street. The Xbox 360 was one of the main consoles that helped popularize the third-person shooting genre. With heavy hitters like Gears of War and Ghost Recon, there was never a shortage of new experiences to try out, but one that would never get its time in the spotlight had to be Hybrid. Perhaps its biggest strength is that it has a completely different style to the other games of its kind, and this mainly comes in the form of a mechanic that's at the center of the gameplay. This is the concept of zero-G combat, where you're free to move your character in any way you see fit, thanks to a jetpack that will see you flying through the air as you dart from cover to cover. You can strafe mid-air or boost to move more quickly, which is usually necessary to avoid enemy fire, and you can land on any type of cover, may that be upside down or even on the side of a wall, which makes movement one of the most engaging aspects of the gameplay. Of course, with it being a shooter, you've also got a wide selection of weapons that range from your standard lasers to machine guns and grenade launchers that all come into play throughout each situation you'll find yourself in. The shooting feels very robust, with each weapon having a distinct feel and ferocity whilst using them, and when you take down an enemy you'll be rewarded in several ways. One sees you gaining experience points which can be used to unlock more weapons and perks that will help turn the tide in your team's favour, and the second is a small drone that will fight alongside you during a kill streak. Although it's not without its issues, Hybrid feels like a breath of fresh air that wasn't afraid to try something new whilst keeping the fundamentals in place. It's just a shame it never got the recognition it deserved. Kingdom Under Fire: Circle of Doom is a spin-off to the popular strategy series that instead flipped the usual formula and focused on a hack-and-slash setup. The story is a rather simple and predictable affair that sees you tackling the forces of evil who are hell-bent on destroying the kingdom and taking it for their own nefarious deeds. Where Circle of Doom comes into its own though is during gameplay, with the combat providing the most enjoyable aspect of the game as a whole. You get to choose from 5 different characters that naturally come along with their own attributes and different strengths as you tackle waves of enemies that will stop at nothing to put your plans on ice. Like many of its kind, you're given several combos and weapons to get the job done, and as you progress with each kill, you'll earn experience points that contribute to your overall level. Upon leveling up, you'll get a boost to your health as well as skill points, which can be used to develop your character in one of several ways, may that be better magic, melee attacks or defense, which all have a role to play in each encounter and provides a reason to play through it again to see all of the different builds that are possible. What adds a real strategic element to each fight though is the use of SP that slowly depletes with every move you use and only regenerates when nothing is performed. This creates an interesting blend of patience and accuracy, as if you mindlessly attack you'll soon find yourself in a tough spot. Luckily you've got many items that can alleviate this, but they are few and far between, so saving them for the right moment, mainly one of the various boss fights that make up the adventure, is a good idea if you intend on surviving. On the whole, this game won't be for everyone, but if you're fond of the series or hack and slashes in general, then it's well worth seeking out and giving a go for yourself. Fighting games were nothing new on the 360, with plenty of options for veterans and new players I'd like to jump into, may that be the likes of Street Fighter or Soul Calibur, but one game that got a bit of a bad rap was Samurai Shodown Sen. It was the first 3D entry in the series and came along with up to 13 different characters, all with their own distinct traits and weaponry, as you battle it out over several modes that range from story to arcade and versus. The main issue with the game though was that of balance, with many of the characters feeling overpowered for new players and making it very hard to get into. Like most fighters though, if you take your time and get used to the various mechanics that make it up, it's soon easy enough to turn this on its head. The weapons based combat is fast and smooth, with your basic attacks being easy to form combos with, but one of the biggest problems many people had with the game was the ability to perform unblockable special moves that are a hell of a lot of fun when you're on the giving end, but will have you cursing the game if you're on the receiving end. For me though, it felt a lot like Bushido Blade on the PS1 that wasn't afraid to punish those who don't take the necessary precautions and dodge or weave out of harm's way. All it takes is a few perfectly landed shots at just the right time in the right part of the body, and you can literally finish them off in 3 hits. And this was a huge change for the series coming off the various entries that made it up, so it's easy to see why some players weren't at all happy, but I for one found the more realistic take refreshing, and although it's nowhere near the best fighting game you can find on the 360, it's still one hell of a blast, especially during multiplayer. Ridge Racer is by far one of my favourite series ever since the original game hit the PlayStation, and like many franchises it evolved and improved over time, with the 6th entry offering up one of the most robust and enjoyable out of the lot. Unlike most racing games, Ridge Racer is firmly stuck in its arcade roots, and its main focus is on drifting, and when you perform a drift around a corner you're rewarded with a nitro bar filling up depending on how well you performed it and for how long. This creates the main hook of the game, with strategically saving your boost or deciding to go all out as you make it across one of the several tracks that make it up. Of course, you've got several modes to jump into, with the main attraction being the World Explorer mode that sees you competing in different events and carving out a route across a series of nodes that make up the main championship. You'll start out small with various cars which are extremely slow compared to some of the more speedy machines you'll unlock as you go forward, and it's this constant feeling of reward that really helps Ridge Racer 6 come into its own. You'll be unlocking new parts, new ways to utilize your nitro, as well as new tracks and vehicles that will keep you coming back time and time again. Now visually, for a launch game, Ridge Racer 6 will still manage to impress, and this is mainly because of the lightning fast speed the gameplay has to offer. During the latter part of the game, some vehicles can reach insane speeds, and this is where most of the challenge lies, with trying to keep your eyes on the road as everything whizzes by in a blur. There's no denying that if it's realism you're after, Ridge Racer won't likely be the racing game for you, but if you want something that's focused on fun and speed, then it won't disappoint in any way. Chrome Hounds is a tactical, mech-based simulator from the same minds who brought us Armored Core. The gameplay is entirely built around the Hounds, which are large, slow-moving mechs with enough firepower to decimate anything that enters its path. As you would expect, as with most games of its kind, you get the ability to build one of these machines from scratch, with a huge amount of different weapons, armor and body parts that makes going through the game to unlock them all an incredibly rewarding task that brings within new ways to tackle each skirmish. Now, the way you play the game is entirely up to you. If you're the type of player that likes to go balls deep into the action, you can take it to the enemy yourself and utilize one of the many different ways to take them down, may that be rockets, artillery strikes, or one of the main types of guns that make up your options. The other approach is a more tactical one, where you can take on the role of a commander and have your teammates do the dirty work for you. This sees you relaying enemy positions to your comrades and watching the battlefield light up from a distance. Either approach has its merits, and the fact that you get to choose is what really helps Chrome Hounds stand out. Mission designs do have a lot of variety, and the locations in which they take place in betray all manner of natural environments. From dense forests to cityscapes and snow-capped mountains, each of them can affect your vehicle in several ways, so planning before you head out and deciding which parts to use is at the center of understanding how to hold your own. While it is forever unfortunate that Chrome Hounds can no longer be played online, the single player still provides plenty of content to make your way through and is bound to satisfy any mech fan that decides to play it. When it comes to combat flight sims on the 360, the go-to option for many would be Ace Combat 6, but since that's still available to buy on the Xbox One, another option that's stuck on the 360 would be OverG Fighters. And instead of offering up a somewhat arcadey approach to its gameplay, it's a game that's grounded in reality, and it's not afraid to challenge those that play it. As you would expect, the entire experience is made up of a series of missions that take on a range of different objectives as you work towards the game's end. These range from recon to escort, elimination and scramble, which are all pretty self-explanatory, but what makes them so enjoyable is the sheer amount of planes and weapons you get to unlock and use throughout each of them. During play, the controls are smooth and responsive, allowing you to react in a timely manner should events go south, with plenty of offensive as well as defensive options at your fingertips. What makes each mission so challenging though is the AI, which does a great job of matching your abilities and at points outperforming you on purpose to stack the odds against you. It's within these moments that OverG Fighters excels and demands a full understanding of all the various aspects that make it up in order to win the day. Now, visually, the game does not disappoint, with each and every plane being afforded a serious amount of detail, as well as the environments you find yourself flying through. May that be the high mountains or the sun-drenched coasts, it all looks great in motion, and what helps is the buttery smooth frame rate that never buckles no matter how intense the on-screen action gets. Overall, if you want a game that captures military flight extremely well, then it doesn't get much better than OverG Fighters. If you've ever played the likes of Diablo, you'll know exactly what to expect when jumping into Crimson Alliance. It's a top-down dungeon crawler where you get to choose from either a mage, assassin or mercenary, which all share three main skills, that being a block, a teleport and dodge, but also their own unique independent moves that play into their class. For example, the mage is best to use from a distance with several projectile-based attacks making short work of the enemies, whereas the assassin is perfect for those up-close and personal encounters. What helps mix it up even more are the several items you can acquire that offer a range of strategies to use. For example, if you pick up poison, it can be added to your attacks that will then slowly tick away at the enemy's health once you've hit them. These strategies are perfect for the moment you find yourself overwhelmed with many different threats, and seeking out the range of combinations you can utilize is half the fun. Now, what makes Crimson Alliance a bit different to the other games of its nature is that you won't actually be leveling up throughout the course of each run. Instead, you'll find heart pieces that slowly increase your amount of health, and soul anchors which are used to unlock special moves. My favourite of these has to be the mages that summons bolts of lightning that can decimate the surrounding area and keeps you on top of the relentless attacks from the various targets that can litter the environment at any one time. Of course, you do have the ability to improve your stats, which is mainly done through acquiring gold and spending it on the desired trait you wish to increase, which does allow a bit of freedom when it comes to building your character. When it comes down to it, Crimson Alliance is a fun and rewarding dungeon crawler, and while it may not have the same polish or production quality of the games that have clearly inspired it, it's still well worth playing. From Software have easily become one of the most renowned developers of recent time, so diving back into their back catalogue of games has become a sort of hobby as of late, and it's full of hits and misses, with Ninja Blade falling well and firmly into the former. Simply put, it's a hack and slash action adventure that puts a huge emphasis upon style that doesn't hold back when it comes to its visceral, edge of your seat gameplay. There's about 9 missions that make up the game as a whole, and at first that may not sound like much, but there's a lot of unlockables that one playthrough won't be enough to get them all. These range from different costumes to new weapons and emblems that you can customize the main character with, but on the whole don't make too much of a difference to the main gameplay. Speaking of which, it shares many similarities with the likes of Ninja Gaiden, with magic, combos and the mastery of your sword being at the center of the experience. Throughout each fight, each enemy you take down will drop crystals which can be used to upgrade your weapon and learn new combos in the process. It's not just simply about mashing your way to victory though, as throughout each encounter several quick-time events are thrown into the mix, as well as some over-the-top cinematics that seamlessly blend with the action. This comes into full swing during one of the many boss battles, which is where Ninja Blade truly comes to life. They're often epic affairs with plenty of variety and challenge, and once they are on death's door, you're free to perform a finishing move that looks like something pulled straight out of an anime. All in all, it's a bit rough around the edges, and it isn't without its fair share of issues, but on the whole, Ninja Blade is without a doubt one of the most exceedingly enjoyable games you'll find on the 360. Well, that does it for another video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to get notified about new videos which release every Monday and Thursday. You can follow me on all of the socials which are linked below to stay up to date, and also join my growing community on Discord to meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with and to take part in giveaways. I'd like to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters Rhino, Skilljim, Shuden, Richard, Amy, Daniel, Dio, Omar, Strider, Pierre, Carl, Awesome Jacket Dude, Maximus, Scott, Alfred, Terry, Ryan, Alex, GameCube Galaxy, Curse Salaryman, Fake and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining my Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon, you'll find all of these links down below. As always, thanks for taking the time to check the video out. I'll catch you next time.